I'm here to really just talk in a broad way about the British economy and what's happened and where we go from here, and particularly the role of the private sector in getting us into a recovery stage. So I would like to start really just by setting the scene and saying what I think has happened in the UK economy and what the scenarios are going forward. None of us really know, to be frank, what's going on. I mean, it's a very uncertain future. And then about some of the policy issues that I think we should be emphasising. We've got to deal with the bank problem, which isn't resolved. We've got to deal with the budget deficit, which is looming over us. But we also get to do this in a way that points towards recovery and growth, without which the British economy is potentially becalmed in a very dangerous way. But let me just start with the crisis we have had and are still living through, and how this happened. I mean, the way I characterise it, and it's a bit of a sort of tired metaphor, but I think it explains a lot, is that what's happened in the last couple of years, but centred 16 months ago, is that the British economy's had the equivalent of a massive heart attack, the economic equivalent of a heart attack. I mean, we've had ups and downs in the economy, I mean, recessions and boom periods. This has happened throughout my lifetime. Most of the post-war period, those of you in business have lived with a cycle. You know that that's the way business works, particularly in sectors like construction. But this is something much more profound. We had an enormous sort of meltdown, basically, in the financial sector, centred on banking. I mean, it was a remarkable event. The whole of this highly sophisticated financial services industry, centred on banking, just effectively collapsing like a pack of cards, and it's done tremendous damage. Now, if you keep in mind the image of the economic heart attack, I mean, what's happening at the moment is that the patient's still alive, fortunately, and in intensive care, but it's only there because of some very remarkable kind of economic medicine that's been administered over the last year and a half. And when you reflect on it, you are aware of just how remarkable this is. We've had interest rates cut to virtually zero. We've had the deliberate, systematic creation of money, something that used to exist in economics textbooks, but we've actually seen applied in practice on a very experimental basis. That's basically what's been keeping the British economy going for the last year and a half. We've had the enormous budget deficits on a scale none of us thought was possible, except in wartime. We've had the banking system half nationalised, and on top of all that, as a byproduct in some ways, we've had a massive devaluation, 25-30% on a trade-weighted basis. It's actually made a lot of difference, and certainly for manufacturers, tourism, and so on. This has been a big stimulus. But all those things together have kept the British economy going. And none of us are certain as to where we go from here. Now, when I worked in the private sector before I became an MP, as Keith pointed out, I was in Shell, one of the big multinationals. We were forbidden from engaging in single-line forecasting on the grounds this wasn't a very sensible way to run your business. We were told to think in terms of scenarios, the way the future could evolve. Indeed, the first day when I took up my job as the chief economist, the chief executive, we called them the chairman of the managing directors, came along and gave me this little tapestry with an Arabic saying on it. And when I asked for the translation, as I was obviously expected to do, it said, I was told that what it said was that those who claim to forecast the future are lying, even if by chance they're later proved right, which was a useful warning. And I think when we're thinking about the future of the British economy, it's useful to think in those terms. There are different ways things could play out. Bad mistakes in the next year or two could send the British economy in a horribly wrong direction. On the other hand, good government, sensible decision making could set the path to recovery. A lot depends on good decisions which have yet to be made. And it's worthwhile sketching out a couple of very simple alternative ways in which the future could evolve. I'm not passing judgment at this stage, but just to think about them. I mean, it is possible to be, basically pretty optimistic about what could happen in Britain. You can tell a story along the following lines. Confidence is gradually coming back. If you look at consumer surveys and business investment expectations, we've had a V shape. It's beginning to look up. People are a bit more positive. There's some evidence in some sectors that growth is coming back. Certainly if you're in exporting, import competing industries, things look better. There is strong growth in parts of the world. In China, growth is unbelievable, double digit. India's 8%, I think, at the moment. And these big Asian economies are spending on imports, much of it raw materials. So you're now getting quite strong growth in Australia, Canada, Brazil, parts of Africa, surprisingly, Saudi Arabia. And all that money is being recycled, and some of it's coming back here. So you can, internationally, there is signs of a revival. And you can project that forward and see how confidence could gradually multiply and people start feeling confident to spend, businesses to invest, and gradually we get out of this mess. And that's the assumption, I think. If you look at the government's numbers, that's the story of the future that they believe and would like us to believe. And they may be right. They may be right. And I'd like to think that they're right, because I want to be optimistic and positive.